What's up, everyone? Razma here, back with another Set 5 item guide. This time we'll be going over the Tier of the Goddess. Quick disclaimer before I begin, the units that I have listed here are not a definitive list. This is just an overall suggestion. There are plenty of 3-cost units that can utilize all the items in the late game. There are plenty of 1 and 2-cost item holders as well. I plan to do more comp-based, best in slot item guides in a week or two once we see how the meta starts to shape up. With that out of the way, let's get right into it. So the first item we're going over is the double tier item, which is the blue buff. The stats give a straight 30 mana, and the ability is after the unit casts their ability, the holder gains 20 mana back. So every time you cast an ability, your unit will gain 20 more mana to start with. And it's a just relatively good overall item for people with a low to medium mana cost who want to cast multiple times in one fight. Ziggs and Brand are both fantastic early game units with this item. I just wanted to put that one out there before, even though I said I'm not going to go talking about 1 and 2 cost much, but they are fantastic units with it. There are reroll builds that seem to utilize Ziggs and or Brand. So both these units love blue buff, so it's very, very good on them. Anyone else who can use it, Diana, Vel'Koz, Garen, Heimer, Teemo, Viego, all great with it. Karma is exceptionally strong. It's probably a core item on Karma because she can go down to only a 10 mana cost, which means she instantly gains all that mana back with the blue buff, and boom, she's great. The Shadow version item is the very dark blue buff. Shadow version stats is 30 mana, same as the regular stats, and the ability is a little different. So after casting their ability, the holder gains back 15 mana, which is 5 mana less than the normal version. But if the holder has less than 60% max HP, the mana back gets increased to 50. That is amazing on units that we're gonna take some damage, but can normally still survive through it. Ziggs is listed because he's absolutely fantastic with this. Once, if you play the 3-star reroll Hellion build, if Ziggs goes below 60% health, he literally just starts chucking bombs, machine guns, boom, 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 and it's absolutely fantastic. A little thing to note. Units like Brand or Katarina, who only have 20 mana to begin with, you never want to put a very dark blue buff on them. They're fantastic with the blue buff because it gives them instant full mana back, but the very dark blue buff would only get them to 15, which would not be good. Otherwise, it can use anyone else. All the same units can use it. A very dark blue buff can be used with Karma, but because her mana scaling already gets her down to a 10 mana cost max, I don't think it's that good on her, and it would just kind of get wasted. And you can be used if you can't get 2 plain tiers and you really need a blue buff, but otherwise I wouldn't really use it on her. Alright, going over to the next item, which is the Archangel Staff. It's made out of the Tier of the Goddess and needlessly large rod. Gives 10 AP, 15 mana. And the ability is every time the wearer casts, they gain 35% of their maximum mana as AP until the end of the fight. Now, in Set 4, this used to be Luden's Echo. Luden's Echo is completely gone, and this is the item that's replacing it. What this means is this item gives a technical infinite AP scaling. They always gain 35% of their max mana as AP, scaling infinitely. So if a unit has 100 mana, they cast their ability, well, now they have 35 extra AP, and that continuously scales throughout the fight, so it technically has infinite scaling. Ziggs and Brand are both units who scale very well with the item, because just how fast they cast. Karma, anyone is viable with it though, any unit who can really just use the extra AP. Ziggs, Brand, Karma, Teemo, Heimer. Pretty much as long as you get a second or third cast out of the unit, it's always going to be worth it. The Shadow version of this item is the Archdemon Staff of Immortality. The same stats, 10 AP, 15 mana, but the ability is a lot different. So each time the wearer casts, they gain empty max HP equal to 300% of their max mana. Then the wearer heals for that amount. TLDR with this, It's the defensive version of the Archangel staff. If your unit has 100 mana and they cast, they will gain a 300 extra max health and then heal for that amount. So this is an infinite scaling health item for AP units. Now, both of these items reset every fight, so it's not like they can get infinitely big for the late game fights. But they're still really good in each fight. Again, Zigzabrand are great users of it. Karma, Timo, Heimerdinger. It should be noted that Warwick is a fantastic early game holder of this item as well. But otherwise, it's like just a defense. It's more of a defensive item, but it has really, really good scaling into the later stages of the game. The next item we're going over is the Redemption, which is a Tear the Goddess and Giant spell. Gives 15 mana, 150 AP, 150 HP health, and the ability is completely different from set 4 and 4.5. Every 5 seconds, the holder heals all allies within 1 hex for 25% of their missing health. Affected allies also take 30% reduced damage from area effect attacks for 5 seconds. This item, I think, is extremely strong. I actually feel like it might be a little too strong for a defensive item. It is very good on melee heavy comps to radiate the healing and the damage reduction buff to as many people as possible. And any like tanky melee unit or any ranged unit who is staying near the rest of your range, this can be used on. I find myself starting a belt sometimes in these games. Getting a belt on a tier, slamming an early redemption, it is absolutely fantastic, and it scales so well into the late game. I will make 2 redemptions in a game now without even thinking about it. That's how good this item is. The shadow version of the redemption is the sacrificial redemption with 15 mana, 150 HP, and the shadow version's ability is a little different. Every 5 seconds, the holder heals all allies on board except themselves for 20% of their missing health. When this happens, the holder damages themselves for 10% of their current health as true damage. What this means is the holder of this item will heal everybody on board instead of just 1 hex away. The heal is less than a normal redemption, and it doesn't have the area of effect attack buff, but it heals everybody on the board. The drawback, like hurting themselves for 10% of their current health, because it's based on current health and not max health, I actually really don't think that's that bad. And I think Sacrificial Redemption is another really good, just sustain item for your entire team. I feel like regular Redemption is a little better, just because of the AoE damage reduction that it gives as well. But the Sacrificial Redemption helps the entire team and doesn't have that like positioning constraint that the regular Redemption does. Alright, next moving over to the Chalice of Power, which is Tear the Goddess and Negatron Cloak with 20 MR and 15 mana. The ability is the same as it was in set 4 and 4.5. At the start of combat, the holder and 1 ally on either side gain 30 AP for the rest of combat. So it's total 90 AP across 3 different units. Pretty damn good. You put it on any support unit to buff your main carry, and you're golden. The shadow version of the item is the Chalice of Malice. 20 MR, 15 mana. At combat start, the allies on either side of the holder gain 45 AP, but the holder itself loses 20 AP. So you gain 45 AP on 2 units, but the holder loses 20 AP. So this is really if you're just trying to buff 1 or 2 units a lot, and you don't need it on, you don't need the Chalice buff itself on the unit who you're putting the Chalice on. I think this item is very, very good for buffing like a Karma, Vel'Koz, or just a lot of good backline carries. If you just throw the item on a trait bot, which I have to fix that typing, that should be throw. If you just throw the item on a trait bot, it is very, very strong because you don't really care about the trait bot losing 20 AP. I think Chalice is another really good buffing item for like Karma Vel'Koz, like I said. I mean, if you think about it, it's 45 AP. That's more than half the AP putting a death cap on a unit gives. Just by itself. That is very, very strong. 2 Chalice of Malices gives 90 AP. That's more than a death cap. That's very, very strong. So the next tier item is the Spear of Shojin. Makes that a tier and a BF sword. Gives 10 AD, 15 mana. And the ability is different than it was in set 4 and 4.5. Basic attacks restore 8 additional mana. Now that might sound the same and just sound buffed, but the big thing to note here is it doesn't restore mana on hit, which means the Shojin and Hurricane combo no longer works. It's just a flat 8 extra mana on every auto attack. No way to buff it, just getting more attack speed is the only way to get more use out of this item. It's good for AP carries, support casters. I've actually seen comps like you put it on Ashe with like a Ginsu quite well. And it just works quite well. It's just pretty much you want more mana generation. This is the item you probably want to use if you're not using a blue buff. The shadow version of the item is the Spectral Spear of Shojin. 10 AD, 15 mana. The shadow version ability makes basic attacks restore 14 additional mana over 8. So that's a 6 more mana increase. But the unit that has it deals 20% reduced damage overall. So you'd really want this on more of like a support caster type of unit. Diana, Ivern, Ryze, Rel, Teemo, Volibear. People who like... With Teemo's but like more people who like you don't really care about losing the damage on. You just want their ability to go out more often. The reason I have Viego on there as well, because when Viego casts, the unit he's hitting is also CC'd for the duration. So even if it doesn't kill the unit, he's still locking them up for the, I think it's 2.5 seconds or 3 seconds that his cast is going off on people, which is why I would build this on Viego, because it's good CC as well. The next item we're going to talk about is the Frozen Heart, which is Tear the Goddess and a Chain Vest, granting 20 armor and 15 mana. And the ability reduces the attack speed of enemies within 2 hexes by 35%. Just a straight, overall, good attack speed slow. The best use of this is definitely going to be on some assassin-type unit. Diana, Viego, both very good with it. Volibear, because he jumps into the middle, like his ult jumps into the backline a little bit more, he'd be very strong with it. I probably wouldn't do it too much on the front line, because attack speed slow on other people's tanks don't really mean that much. The shadow version of the item is the Frozen Dark Heart. The same stats, but the ability is a little different. So it reduces the attack speed of all enemies within 2 hexes by 50%. So it's a 15% more attack speed slow. And it reduces the attack speed of all allies, except the wearer, within 1 hex by 50%. So it's a bigger attack speed slow on enemies, but what can also affect the allies. Really, I don't think the negative on this item is really that bad. If you just throw this on an assassin still, if you play it like that, I think you know, why not just use the shadow version, because it's a more attack speed slow. I really wouldn't probably put this on my own tanks just in case, but I would use it on like a Diana, a Viego, any other assassin you're playing. I would definitely use it. Alright, so next we're going to go to Statikk Shiv, which is a Tear the Goddess and the recurve bow. It grants 10 attack speed and 15 mana, and the ability is every 3rd basic attack unleashes a chain of lightning that bounces to 4 enemies. Each enemy takes, this is actually 70, I just forgot to edit that, takes 70 magic damage, and has their magic resist get reduced by 70% for 5 seconds. The 5 damage buff actually just happened tonight. It's late Monday night right now that they put out these patch notes. That's why my graphic was wrong. But pretty much, this is actually a pretty viable item now overall, because the magic resist shred is no longer tied to Statikk Shiv critting. Statikk Shiv actually can't crit anymore. So it's just a guaranteed 280 base magic damage over 4 units, as well as shredding magic resist on every proc. Overall, probably a really good unit. Really good item, especially if you're playing a magic damage heavy comp for that MR shred. That MR shred is huge. Would normally use this on a secondary carry or a support unit for the proc. Don't really want to put it on your main carry. The Statikk Stiletto is the Shadow version, and the Shadow version gives, again, 10 AS, 15 mana. But the ability is a little different. So every second basic attack, meaning every other attack, it unleashes the lightning, dealing 70 magic damage to 4 enemies. I'm noticing a lot of typos right now. Sorry about that. Dealing 70 magic damage to 4 enemies. Same as the other version, but procs every second attack instead of every third. A lot bigger of a proc. A lot more procs. It keeps the magic resist shred as well. The negative that this item gets is the holder of the item loses 33% attack damage. Really, I don't think that negative means almost anything. You're going to put this item on a, support type unit, a secondary carry, someone who you don't really care about losing the AD, and it's just going to proc more often to get even more lightning damage. I think it's a very, very, very strong item overall. I would definitely slam it in the early game because there's the amount of damage that does early game is ridiculous. In late game, the MR shred is fantastic. Now, the last item we're going over for tier is the Hand of Justice. There's a Tear of the Goddess and a Sparring Glove. The stats are 15 mana, 15 crit, 15 dodge, and the ability is roughly the same as it was in set 4 and 4.5. The unit who's holding this item gains one of 2 buffs. 40 AD and 40 AP, or attacks and abilities heal for 40% of damage dealt. The buff is chosen randomly each planning phase, which is this right before the fight starts. You can see what buff it gets by the color the unit starts to glow. The difference here is it has 40 AD and AP instead of just 40% increased damage. So it gives flat stats instead of the increased damage. I still think it's a relatively good item. It's probably one of the most flexible items again, still extremely flexible. But at the same time, I feel like it's not that great for any specific unit. So, with making this item and putting it on someone, you're trading flexibility for the raw power early game. Is pretty much what you're doing. Viable forecast holders, you can look at the pictures. Literally anybody. Apparently I put Viego twice because I like him that much. It's literally anybody. Any damage dealer, I should say. Anyone who can use the AD or AP, or if it rolls healing, you don't mind if they have healing. The Shadow version of the item is the Hand of Vengeance, has the same stats as the regular version, and the Shadow version ability grants both sides of the buff. So it grants 40 AD, 40 AP, and attacks and abilities heal for 40% damage done. So the downside about this item is these buffs turn off after the first takedown and then turn back on after the next, cycling on and off. So get a takedown, turns off, get a takedown, turns back on, get a takedown, turns off, back and forth, back and forth. I find the item has potential to be extremely strong because it grants great AD, AP, as well as healing bonuses. But with it turning off, if there's a chance that the buff is off when you really need it to get that healing proc to survive something. But overall, I still think this is a pretty damn good item. Viable forecast holders is, again, any unit you either want to have any more damage or healing and can still survive while the proc is down. I think this item works really well if you can pair it with someone with AoE, like an Aphelios who hits multiple people, put it on someone who is a Hurricane, Karma, who do a lot of AoE damage. I feel like this is a very, very viable item. You just have to be careful because the downside is a pretty big downside when it's turned off. And that should pretty much sum up everything for the tier items. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and come see me live on Twitch. I'm live 6 days a week, Monday to Saturday, 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I explain all my plays. I answer all questions. I focus on educational gameplay. and just overall having a good time with stream. I hope everyone had a fantastic time watching this, and have a good night.